Today, Mr. Daniel Alex and myself, Laura Garcia, we're going to show you how to do a simple coolant flush with the Robinair Coolant Flush machine. Now, I understand that you're probably going to be using a different system in your shop, probably a VG system, a coolant flush machine, but they all work off of the same principles.
Begin by filling one tank with 16 quarts of 50% water and 50% antifreeze. Remove the air cleaner assembly or any other easy-to-remove components that may be in the way of gaining access to the upper radiator hose. Now, considering that a fair amount of coolant will come out when you remove the upper radiator hose, it's always a good idea to prepare the surrounding area to ensure that you don't have excessive amounts of coolant going into areas you don't want. Now, make sure that the engine is cool and remove the pressure cap from either the radiator or the surge tank. Next, turn the dials both to vacuum, and then you will use your suction hose to remove as much coolant as you possibly can from the radiator. Don't forget to remove any excess coolant that may be still in the coolant reservoir before you disconnect the upper radiator hose using a hose clamp. These hose clamp pliers operate by attaching the two tangs on the pliers to the two ends on the hose clamp, just like so. Simply squeeze, slide back the hose clamp, and then remove your upper radiator hose. Now, be aware that unfortunately coolant will still spill out even though we have already siphoned some, so it's important to make sure that you have a coolant drain pan underneath the area and clean up any spills. Now match your adapters to fit the radiator and the upper radiator hose. Now secure both the upper radiator hose adapter and the radiator adapter with the appropriate hose clamps. Attach the black hose, also known as the inlet to vehicle hose, to the upper radiator hose and turn the valve into the on position. This will allow coolant to flow through the upper radiator hose and force the thermostat open. Now attach the clear hose, also the outlet to the machine hose, to the radiator. And this way the machine will be able to collect the old fluid and put it into the machine. Close the radiator cap and don't forget to block off any overflow hoses that may allow pressurized coolant to go into either the overflow tank or out into the engine bay. Turn both knobs to exchange, and if the pump is operating properly, then you should see pressure build on the gauge. You should now start to see old coolant exiting the vehicle through the clear hose. When the process is complete, turn both valves to the off position. Close the valve on the coolant flush machine hose and disconnect the hoses from the adapters. Now release all overflow hoses and begin the process of removing the adapters. During this process, please keep in mind that you want to disconnect all hose clamps and use a set of hose pinch pliers to keep as much fluid as possible from coming out of the hoses as you disconnect them. Remove the adapter from the upper radiator hose and then quickly remove the adapter from the radiator as you install the upper radiator hose back onto the radiator. Now we'll set both valves to exchange and use our clear hose to replace any fluid that may have been lost during the reinstallation of the upper radiator hose, as well as top off the coolant reservoir. Next, we want to ensure that the area is clean of all coolant using a blowgun. Sometimes you can also use brake clean as well. Be sure to install the air cleaner and reconnect any sensors that may have been disconnected. Next, you want to ensure that all air has been purged through the system by attaching your cooling system funnel, setting your machine to the exchange function, filling your funnel up about 1/3 to 1/2 of the way, and letting your engine run until it reaches operating temperature, and then you want to raise your idle to around 2000 RPMs to ensure that all air has been purged, which could prevent uneven heating of the engine as well as heat loss in the cabin. Also be sure that your heater is turned on as well. Once this process is complete, you'll notice that you have significantly less fluid left in your coolant funnel. Simply plug the stopper in and replace your radiator cap as quickly as possible to eliminate any extra fluid loss. Now, simply put your coolant that's left over in the funnel into the coolant flush machine. Given that coolant flushes are typically very messy, it's important to ensure that you clean your bay after you are finished to ensure that no one will slip and fall in your area.